and welcome back to another She's the Boss interview. Today I'm joined by the founder of the Womb Room, Saschan. Hi Saschan, thank you so much for joining us. Please tell us a little bit more about the Womb Room. It's a really interesting name. Please tell us how you came up with the name and what it's all about.
So the name is, I have to give the credit to my mom, because she came up with it one day. So I set up the Womb Room in 2011 after I had surgery to remove my right ovarian fallopian tube. And originally it started off as a blog, and I was blogging about my experiences to help other young women in particular who were struggling with their reproductive well-being to manage their conditions and understand their bodies. And it kind of just spiraled from there, really. And it turned from a blog into a fully fledged business.
And what was the impetus to turn it into a business specifically? Why didn't you just carry on writing a blog?
So the blog was getting a lot of traction. So at its peak, I had about 20,000 individual views a day. And I applied for some funding from Unlimited, the social enterprise funder. And as a result of that, I got an opportunity to give a talk to members of the Royal Society of Arts. And after that talk, somebody came up to me and said, what you have could actually be a really good social business. So I went away and I thought about it, and I was like, really, what would I like to do? If I could do anything to empower other women, what would it be? So we started off delivering reproductive health awareness sessions to young girls in schools to teach them how to recognise the signs and symptoms something might be wrong and how to self-advocate, in the hope that in doing that, young women wouldn't just be more empowered, but it would help to reduce the length of time it takes for women to get a diagnosis of a condition, which is typically, for some conditions, 7 to 10 years. But that wasn't successful as a business model financially. So I had a bit of time away from actively working on the business, and more recently focused on providing events, digital support services, and corporate consultancy to support women in the workplace.
So how does that work? How do you present what you do to corporate organizations? I can't imagine that being a particularly easy conversation to have.
I think because I don't come from a corporate background, my professional experience has all been within the third sector, managing health and wellbeing projects and supporting young people. So it was quite daunting stepping into an area of work that I've never really been a part of. But I was really fortunate in that I took part in Ernst & Young's Accelerate program. And I think that was really my foot in the door. So because I had a warm relationship with them from having a mentor who worked in their business, that allowed me to kind of reach out to them and say, look, I've done some research and it costs businesses within the UK hundreds of millions of pounds every single year for days of sickness and absence that are taken off by women due to issues related to their reproductive wellbeing and menstruation. We can help to train your managers, directors, and teams to make them more aware of how reproductive health problems impact productivity and working relationships and women's well-being. And we can use some of the money from providing that service to plough back into providing free education for girls in schools and local communities. So I think that was kind of like my foot in the door. And after Ernst & Young took an interest in the work that we're doing, that allowed other organisations like NatWest, RBS, KPMG, Pinsent Masons to kind of take an interest in the work as well. So yeah, it's kind of just spiraled a bit from there.
It sounds like really well-known brands that you've been working with. And I guess what's really interesting is that you saw that there was an opportunity for you to commercialize what you're doing, and sometimes that can be a big struggle for those working in this social and I guess third sector field.
Yeah.
What gave you the idea to take it that route?
I think it came from my experience with work myself. So last year I had 2 operations in quite close succession to one another, and so that meant that I needed to take what initially I thought would be 4 weeks out of work turned into 3 months. And when I came back to work, my relationship with my employer became extremely untenable, and in the end I had to leave. So I was quite fortunate in that I had financially a cushion, and I already had an established, at the time, I can't say it was a business, but I had a project that I was working on.
You had a brand.
Yeah. And I knew what I wanted to do, but I wasn't 100% clear on it. So I think I had the privilege of being able to take that time after I left that job to work on the womb room and really focus on what I wanted to do. It's taken me a good few months to really define, okay, how do we make ourselves financially sustainable? Because I think my problem to begin with was I had this blue sky thinking dream that because it's health, it should be free. And the reality is I'd like to provide free at the point of contact support services and education and support for women. But the cost to do that, it has to come from somewhere. And I don't think that grant funding is like a reliable model for maintaining your business. So I wanted to find something that would make us financially sustainable in the long term. And I took the experience that I'd had at work and I started talking to other women. And there were a lot of women that I came across who had been forced out of their jobs like I had, or women who'd just been outright fired from their jobs because of their reproductive well-being, women who had been passed up for promotion, or women who didn't feel that they could put themselves forward for high-level positions that they were more than capable of as a result of their reproductive health, because the workplace, particularly in the corporate world, is so competitive and the hours you're expected to put in are so long. But if you have an inflammatory condition, for example, working 70 hours a week is not beneficial to your health. And so that has a knock-on effect on what you're able to achieve in your career, but also the bottom line of those companies. And it's costing them money and it's costing you parts of your lifestyle and your dreams, realistically. And I figured that that shouldn't be the case, because if workplaces that have almost an equal commitment to men and women in the workplace are really invested in their people and really invested in the well-being of their staff, then they should really focus on making sure that the 50% of their workforce that statistically almost every single one of them will present with some reproductive health problem during their life course that are affected by these conditions should have the support that they need to help make those businesses better, but also to help improve these individuals' lives. And so it kind of just grew from there. So I looked at, we put together a training course for kind of like HR. It's based around HR and law, but also managing difficult relationships and getting employers to understand not just what is best practice, but what should go above and beyond being your legal requirements, and what should go above and beyond best practice, and should be things that you implement in the core of your business that impact your company's culture. And we're also developing a research kind of consultancy service to assess businesses based upon how well they're supporting women's well-being at work, and if they're not, how much is it costing them and what can they do to change that. So yeah, it's like I feel like I'm a little bit in over my head, to be honest. So it's a lot of it is new for me, but I think it's really exciting.
It sounds like actually it's a really worthwhile area that you're working on, and as a woman, something that I don't really think I've even given too much thought. But now you're saying it, I do know lots of women who have had challenges in the workplace due to issues around their reproductive health. So it's definitely worthwhile. What was the kind of scariest thing for you in starting a business?
I think when I first started, I didn't really have any fears because everything was so new. So everything was just really exciting to get offered opportunities to go to like Portugal, to business conferences and give talks and work on projects and stuff. It was all really exciting. I think the scariest thing has been actually having the confidence to negotiate money with people, to actually value the service that I'm providing enough to say this is the price and it's not negotiable. And I think when you aren't comfortable negotiating money, or you don't come from a professional background where having to negotiate money is a part of your job, that can be a really uncomfortable feeling, because you kind of feel like you feel rude for asking, but at the end of the day, the money that we make from providing that training and that research, a significant percentage of that goes back into providing free services for women to support them to live their best life and manage their conditions effectively.
And so, is that something that you came to on your own? Did somebody say that to you? Like, what was the, okay, I really need to value what I'm doing moment?
I think it was a combination of, my dad is always banging on to me about, if it's not making money, then it's not a business, it's just an expensive hobby. Yeah. And I think I was quite reluctant, because I was so passionate. I was really reluctant to have the conversation about money in the beginning. And I think it was really when I kind of hit like financial rock bottom, and I was like, look, if I don't start valuing myself and asking for money and saying this is what we do and this is how much it costs, then nobody's going to pay me, and closed mouths don't get fed. So really, I had to, that kind of talking to my dad. And also I have a mentor at NatWest, and he said to me that if you don't price what you're doing appropriately and you don't put appropriate value on your work, you're not just underselling yourself, you're essentially putting yourself out of the marketplace, because certain companies won't work with you if your work seems too cheap, because it's almost that it seems too good to be true. But other companies won't work for you if your prices are too high. Like, you need to find your happy medium and establish what you're doing as being important, and get other companies to feel invested and see the value in your work. But in order to do that, you have to have the confidence to see that value in yourself first. And he was just like, I don't think that you really value yourself enough to command the kind of price that you should be commanding. And he gave me an example of somebody else that he had done some work with, and they had priced a course that they'd produced at a third of the price that they were originally going to put it out at, and the course sold out within 1 day. And when he asked for feedback on the course, people said that they would have paid 4 or 5 times the amount that he had actually charged them for this course. And that turned out that he'd lost £30,000-40,000. And I was like, well, that's a significant amount of money. What could we do to change women's lives if we had that much money? So I think that was the moment I was like, no, I have to be serious about and confident about negotiating.
No, it's really interesting, because I've been looking at doing some pricing strategies today, and it's, obviously I was supposed to speak to you today to remind myself of that exact same thing. And what has been the highlight of this journey for you so far?
I think it's probably meeting other women who feel confident and empowered enough to share their stories, because a lot of women don't talk about their reproductive health issues. It's very taboo to talk about your fertility or your struggle to have children, or maybe the fact that you don't want to have kids, but you've got this really serious reproductive health condition like endometriosis or fibroids that's disrupting and affecting your life. And what you actually want is your quality of life back. And we don't talk about those things as women. We don't talk about how they affect our relationships and our identities and our careers, and the widespread impact that they have on us, both in public and in private. And I think providing the space for women to come together and actually allow themselves to be vulnerable has been, I think that has definitely been the highlight. Even the times when, the fact that when we launched an event series last year, and almost every single event that we've done, somebody has got up in the room and they've shared something deeply personal about their journey and cried, and that's made other people cry. And I think seeing that kind of level of sisterhood, but knowing that I successfully created a space that allowed people to feel that they could be that vulnerable, that they could share the most intimate parts of their life that they don't even talk to their close family and friends about. I think that has really been a highlight, because I think there's a lot of power in you being able to tell your own story to a room full of strangers, and use that as a place to start kind of healing and working through accepting what your body is going through and what you're living with and experiencing, but working on moving forward with it in a positive way.
And going on a point that you just made, why do you think that it is so taboo? And as I'm speaking, I am thinking about the fact that all women have some sort of reproductive issue on some level. Well, maybe not even an issue, but most people have periods. Most people at some point will have a baby if they're women and want to have a baby. Like, there's so many different elements of, I guess, our reproductive system that so many women experience, yet we don't hear women speak about it very much, especially in the media. Why do you think that is, and how do you think we can go about changing that?
I think we don't talk about it because we're socialized to keep this stuff to ourselves because it's considered shameful. It's considered, if you think about like the narrative of womanhood and women's bodies, our personal bodily functions and our well-being is often shamed. Periods are often considered dirty and shameful, and we don't really talk about them. They're very hush-hush. And even in homes, a lot of the time, we reinforce from generation to generation this idea that, one, that you were going to be able to have a child, when that's not necessarily true for every woman. It's just an assumption that we have until we get to a point in our lives where maybe we're in a situation where we discover that actually that might not be possible for us. And that's sometimes the first time that we think about our fertility in that way. And I think the narrative around women's health and certain conditions, sometimes it's attached to the narrative of sexuality about women's bodies. So, for example, I had pelvic inflammatory disease as a result of having the coil fitted. But if I tell people that I've had pelvic inflammatory disease, a lot of people, their first thought is that must mean that I'm very sexually promiscuous and I've had an STI, because you'll most commonly get pelvic inflammatory from having chlamydia, for example. Even though that's not how I got it, that's people's assumption. And so I think that narrative that women can't be sexual beings and be healthy and fulfilled in their life and be good women, whatever that means, reinforces this idea that we shouldn't talk about certain things. And infertility, for example, particularly within BAME communities, it's almost unspoken about, even though the prevalence is actually quite high. Black and Asian women are at a higher risk of certain reproductive health problems than white women, for example, but they also have lower health outcomes and greater health and social and economic inequalities than white women do, which increases their risk of long-term health problems and, in some cases, infertility. So as a community, sometimes we hear all of those stereotypes about people who've got loads of children. And I guess like in terms of like racially, there's this idea that Black women our bodies are very sexualized, that we're very kind of overtly promiscuous and sexual, that we breed like rabbits, which is like a phrase that is thrown out like, willy-nilly. And I think that reinforces this idea that we shouldn't talk about infertility, that it doesn't happen to us, but actually it's a really serious issue within our communities, and we don't highlight it enough. We don't talk about it enough. And I think as well, it's because statistically, nearly every single woman will present with a reproductive health problem during her lifetime. And we still live in a world that is predominantly constructed for the benefit of men. So men don't see the value. Men who are the key decision makers, usually in women's health, in politics and policy and education, I don't think that they recognize the value in providing these services for women. And I think that's why there's not that much investment in it, because children to some extent are seen as a luxury and not a necessity. And I think because socially there's not enough value placed on women's bodies to value them enough to say, if, for example, nearly every man was going to suffer with a reproductive health problem that would potentially impact their fertility, we'd have funding like left, right, and centre for it. I think it's because the people who make the decisions at the highest level are typically men, not women, and they just don't see the value in investing in these services for women in the same way.
and you've really made me start to think about things that I haven't really thought of at all. So I thank you for that. In terms of moving forward with the business, what role do you think you and the business have in, I guess, breaking down the taboos and normalizing kind of discussions around reproductive health, and what are your goals around that?
Oh, that's a good question.
Should have given you a heads up.
I think, I don't know, I'm like a pretty big thinker. So I guess like my ultimate goal is like total world domination. I don't think that there's enough done globally to not just to raise awareness about how prevalent reproductive health problems are and the widespread impact that they have, but to actually practically put in place support services for women. And for me, I don't think it's enough for the Women Room as an organisation to solely focus on research or solely focus on online support provision. I think from speaking to women, what they really want is they want that physical connection with other people who can understand their experiences that they're going through. And they want that space to be able to share their experiences. They want to know that somebody cares about them, that someone's thinking about them, which were all the things that I wanted when I came out of hospital. So I guess my aim is really to challenge the narrative and change the conversation that we have about women's bodies and our experiences engaging with health services, our experiences of managing our reproductive well-being with very little education and very little, almost basically non-existent support, and the way that intersects with not just how we live our lives, but how we present ourselves on a day-to-day basis, how we manage our mental health and well-being, and how we manage that journey emotionally. I want to create a space using the Womb Room that is as safe a space as possible for women to come to and be able to take knowledge and community and learning from that will help them and empower them to live the best life that they can live and achieve all the things that they want to achieve. You want to be a chief executive of a FTSE 500 company, go and do that. Like, you can do that, but I think it's understanding, it's supporting not just women, but also men and key decision makers to understand that we're not men. Our bodies do not work in the same way that men's bodies work. And equality is not about saying, okay, I've got a football and you've got a football. That's fine. But what if you have a football, but you've only got one leg? Is that going to be useful? How do we actually put in place the tools and the support services that will empower you to be able to succeed and do as well as somebody else who doesn't have a reproductive health problem, who isn't plagued by bouts of inflammation or depression and anxiety, somebody who doesn't have chronic pelvic pain or heavy periods? How do you put in place that flexibility to make sure that we can still live a full life and achieve the things that we want to achieve, but still be seen as valuable and equal in the workforce, in our families, in our communities? Those are the things that I want to challenge and talk about and do. And I think that the thing that people connect with the most is me being able to share my own experiences. And I find that when you share your story with women, that encourages them to open up and talk about the things that they've been going through. And for some people, that is literally the first step, being able to stand there and say to somebody, I've really been struggling with this and I just haven't said anything. And I think being able to, I don't want to say like be a beacon of hope.
Why not? I like that.
But I guess, yeah, to be able to show other women, you don't have to be ashamed. You don't have to be ashamed if you can't have children. You don't have to be ashamed if you don't want to have children. And there's nothing wrong with admitting that you're finding something hard, that your mental health is in a bad place, that your physical health is in a bad place. And there's nothing wrong with being able to admit those things to yourself and to the world. And it's not selfish for you to take the time that you need and use the resources that you need to better yourself and give yourself the best chance in life. I guess being able to show that you can still achieve the things that you want to achieve, maybe not always in the way that you want to do them, regardless of your reproductive health conditions. I think that's really important to me.
And following on from that, what are some of the major challenges or the greatest challenges that you faced, or things that you struggle with the most in running a business?
Probably, I think I'm gonna say it's my reproductive well-being, because I have stage 4 endometriosis, which had fused my bladder and my bowels and my uterus together. Even though I had surgery to excise that, the surgery wasn't that successful. So I get chronic pain and inflammation in my pelvis. I get quite bad swelling. I've had moments where the pain and the swelling spreads from my pelvic area down to my hips and my knees. And I've had days where I can't even physically get out of the bed and walk. Then prolonged bouts of inflammation cause me to get anxiety, which I think being unwell a lot of the time really knocks your confidence. And so it's like waking up every day knowing that almost every day I have debilitating pain, but it's still being able to kind of push through regardless of that. Like that can be a struggle, because I think I'm the kind of person by nature, my mind is always going at like 120 miles per hour. And I'm always thinking of the next exciting thing that I want to work on and do, because I'm quite creative. So being limited physically by what my body can physically achieve in any given period of time, that is a struggle for me. Because in my head, I think to myself, if I was perfectly healthy, what could I have done this week that I haven't been able to get done because of my pain and inflammation? I think that's a struggle. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, I can imagine, but it's always that you can look at it another way. If you had been perfectly healthy, you wouldn't have started a business. You could be stuck in a day that you dislike. Not that that makes the pain any better, but
but it makes me feel like there's some purpose in it.
Yeah. How do you keep pushing when you're in those situations where you can't get out of bed? What keeps you going?
That's a good question as well.
That's right.
Keeps me going. I think it's knowing that if tomorrow I decided to stop working towards wanting to make the world a better place for women, who else is going to do it? Any kind of major catalyst for change throughout history has started usually from a group of people having a shared experience, but one person or a smaller enclave within that group having the impetus to actually go out and do something about it and be quite fearless in pursuing change for the greater good. So I think for me, when I started the Womb Room in 2011, the number of women who the National Institute of Clinical Excellence predicted would present with reproductive health problems was 1 in 2. And then 2 years ago, that statistic changed to nearly every single woman. And in that period of time where I kind of took a break from the business and wasn't doing anything, nobody set up any support services. This stuff still wasn't talked about. It wasn't on anybody's agenda, and women were still suffering. And so I think knowing that if I stop, there's still going to be people out there who, like me, are living with this every day and still don't have the support they need, that makes me feel uneasy, because I feel that I have the ability to make a change. And I think being able to create something that is not for the moment, something that's intergenerational, something that will last for years and years and years after I'm gone, and will still have a positive impact on changing and improving women's lives, that is a real motivation for me.
It's motivating me. And I guess finally, what 3 pieces of advice would you give to a woman who may have reproductive health issues but wants to start a business, or who's already started a business and and her reproductive health issues are getting her down, what 3 pieces of advice would you give to her?
I would say pace yourself, because it's really easy for you to have 101 ideas, want to work on them all, but you don't have the resource and you don't physically have the energy to do that. So pace yourself, choose one thing or two things, definitely no more than three, and work on building those things consistently. And even if that means that you know that 2 days a week, for example, you're going to be in bed, if you can schedule things in advance, if you can reduce how much you have to travel by taking like virtual meetings using Skype or some other service, do those things, because they'll help make your life easier, they'll help you build your business, and they'll help to preserve your health insofar as you can. I think network with as many people as possible, whether they're in the industry that you're interested in or not. When you tell people what you're doing, particularly if it's something that changes people's lives, the thing that I've found consistently is people will support you. Some people won't understand what it is that you're doing, and that's fine, because those people are not meant for you. Or those people will see when you've been working on it consistently and they start to see results. But don't be afraid to ask for things. If you need help, if you need finance, if you need, I don't know, we did a photo shoot a couple of years ago. I needed a photographer and a stylist and somewhere to shoot the pictures. And I went into a 1950s salon in the custard factory, and I was like, look, this is what I do. This is the photo shoot that I want to do. Can you help me? They were like, yeah, we'll do all your hair. We'll do all of the makeup for £30. We'll let you use the studio space for the whole day. If I'd never gone in there and been brave enough to ask, that would never have happened. So yeah, be fearless. And I think also make sure that you carve out time for your own self-care, and that you're always on top of your own emotional and mental well-being. Because when you're struggling with your reproductive health, sometimes you don't feel that your experience is valid, particularly if other people are like, oh, well, you don't look like you're in pain, because they see you show up to work every day, or they see you attend family functions, or they see you on nights out with your friends. Sometimes that makes you feel like your lived experience is invalidated, and that is not the case at all. However you're feeling, whatever your body is going through, that is a valid experience, and nobody's opinion that you're lying or that that's not the whole truth is valid or really impactful or purposeful in your life. Make sure that you do what you need to do to preserve your own mental well-being, because women who suffer with conditions like polycystic ovaries, for example, are at increased risk of serious mental health problems like psychosis. And women who have endometriosis and adenomyosis and fibroids have increased risk of depression and anxiety. So really taking care of your mental well-being is essential. Because your body might feel like, I've been in my hospital bed and I've taken meetings with people in hospital, but if my mental health is not in a good place, taking meetings is pointless, because I can't be productive. Even if I have to work from my bed because my body is not physically able, I can do that. But I think when your mind is shot and emotionally you don't have anything left to give and you're spent, that's when you hit rock bottom, and that's not the place that you want to be in. So carving out time for your self-care is essential to your survival, really.
I was thinking, I asked this question about what advice would you give, and people always go, and then they come out with 3, 4, sometimes 5 amazing answers, because you hesitated, but that was fantastic advice that you gave. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
If people want to find out more about you and the Womb Room, where can they go to do so?
So all of our social media, our Twitter, our Facebook, our Instagram, we're most active on Instagram, is at the Womb Room, and our website is thewombroom.co.uk. So you can find out events that we are putting on throughout the year across London and Birmingham. You can read up on food and nutrition information. You can find podcasts, videos, newspaper articles about reproductive health. that might be of use to you. Yeah, like a little mini reproductive health encyclopedia. And we work with a really great team of doctors who are pelvic floor specialists, gynecologists, researchers, who can give you advice as well. So, yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much for your time, and I wish you every success in your business. And thank you guys all for watching. Please make sure that you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. There's lots of other She's the Boss interviews, so please go and check them out. If you've enjoyed this video, please click the like button, and please make sure that you write a comment under sharing any experiences that you've had with your reproductive health. Thank you for watching.